Hello and welcome to Powering Modern Application Security Platforms with New Electric Engines. Today's webinar is sponsored by Backslash and produced by Actual Tech Media. My name is Scott Becker. I'm from Actual Tech, and I'm excited to be your moderator for this special event. Now, before we get to today's great content, we have some housekeeping items that will help you get the most out of this session. First off, we want this to be an informative event for you, so we encourage any questions in the questions box in your webinar control panel. Not only will we have team members responding to questions during the live event, but we'll also have a dedicated Q&A session at the end of the presentation where we'll discuss in greater detail some of the top questions that you ask. That Q&A panel is also the place to let us know about any technical issues that you might be experiencing. A browser refresh is going to fix most audio, video, or slide advancement issues, but if that doesn't work, just let us know in the Q&A and we'll provide further technical assistance. Now, next, in the handout section of your webinar control panel, you'll find that we're offering several resources. I'd especially like to call your attention to a PDF of a solution brief about modern AppSec via reachability analysis. Great resource that's in there. You can grab it at any time during the presentation, although I'd encourage you to grab it now so you don't forget later. Third, at the end of this webinar event, we will be awarding a $250 Amazon gift card to one lucky registrant. Of course, you must be in attendance during the live event to qualify for that prize. Official terms and conditions of today's prize drawing can be found in the handout section. Just scroll to the bottom and you'll find the link with the details there. Now, finally, one of the best benefits of this event is the opportunity to ask a question of our expert presenter. And so to help encourage your questions, we have a special additional prize for you. That's another Amazon gift card, this one for $50 for the highest quality, best question. So after the event is over, we'll look at all the questions that came in, pick out the very best one, and contact that prize winner. Okay, with all that housekeeping out of the way, let's get to today's fantastic session. It is my absolute pleasure to introduce you to our presenter today, Shahar Maan, who is CEO of Backslash. Shahar, welcome.
Thank you very much, Scott. Thanks for having me here today. So, with no further ado, and thank you everyone for joining me for this session, let me just start. So, a little bit about myself. My name is Shahar Maan, the co-founder and CEO of Backslash Security. I started my career with a big German company called SAP, spent time in their site in their headquarters in Palo Alto, mainly leading large engineering team, and my special expertise was in agile development, Scrum development when it was starting to catch up back in 2010. And then one of my friends started a company called Aqua Security. I was one of the first to join. It was a very small startup when I joined, just 10 people. I was the first executive running the engineering team. Built a pretty big team there, around 150 people. And I got the appetite from extending the company's agenda from just container security to cloud security, to move to application security space with Backslash two years back. And that was very exciting. I put some a little bit from my hobbies, not only work. So I'm a Tai Chi instructor, mainly for youth and youngsters. I practice Ashtanga yoga, and I'm okay chess players. If you want to, involve some of the questions, some of the topics around that, I'll be happy to answer as well. So that's about me. But we're not here to talk about me. We're here to talk about what you're going to gain from this session. So by the end of the session, I can promise you the following. You will have a pretty good idea on what's happening on the market, on the AppSec market, and how it's transforming this year particularly. The state of shifting left security, that's a bold statement that you will know exactly what's happening there, but I try to give you some pointers to how successful this trend has been and how it is, and my opinionated statement around that. I'll share with you what we believe and what we see in the market as the number one criteria today for modern AppSec strategy when picking up your strategy and your tools and your program around that. And last but not least, I'll share a short video of Backslash. If you haven't ran into our platform, that's going to be educational, not too long, and we'll address some of the points, of course, that I've shared in that presentation. Maybe before we even start, I want to say thank you to someone who was not here with me 5 years ago and now is really helpful with creating a nice presentation to ChatGPT and more specifically ChatGPT 4 and DALI image generator that all I need to do is just imagine what type of picture and image I want to convey my message with, and it's doing a pretty good job. I think you will agree with me to doing it for me. So let's start with the AppSec market. So as you know, probably if you're following what's happening in the market, all the acquisitions, investments, a lot is going on. Just to name a few, GitLab acquired Oxai, Almo Code raised money, Palo Alto acquired cybersecurity, Bionic was acquired by CloudStrike. A lot is going on in this market. I think we're seeing two major trends. One, we see pretty solid churn, I would say, from the existing legacy vendors for application security. And I'll talk about it a little bit. And we're looking at enterprises that are looking for new ways to address the AppSec paradigm because there's an understanding that what we've done till now will not continue working for us as we move forward into the very exciting future ahead of us. And here's the first picture by ChatGPT. So I asked ChatGPT and DALI to create what happened when the first attacks on code and leveraging code vulnerabilities have started. If you can go all the way back to the Stone Age, so you can see this guy writing the first code, and already there attackers find out that, especially with web application, how they can take advantage of code not written securely in order to make a lot of damages. I guess many of you on the call knows what is SQL injection. If a developer wants to write something to the database, he asks for an input from the web application, and in that very innocent-looking text box, someone puts an apostrophe and then put an insert or delete table statement, or whatever he wants. He just concatenate the string into the SQL query, and then he can do basically a lot of damages to that company, changing data, stealing data, and that's just the most popular familial attack, but it's still with us. That's very unfortunate. It's one of the most top 10 stubborn attacks that we're seeing even today in 2024. So, and as an industry, as long as we talk about it, we haven't done a great job with coping with this SQL injection, as famous as it is. So this is how it all started. We understand that code can create weaknesses and have attackers take leverage and exploit them. So then came the first scanning tools or static code analysis, right? So what if I could have a magical software that will scan my code before it goes to production? So that could be a good idea. And then the static application security testing concept started with more and more scanners, which their main goal was to take and find all the known attack patterns and surface them to the developers and let them fix them. They had to chase after the pace of the evolving development languages in the world and the attack patterns, so it was a constant chase. But it feels like we find a way as an industry to scan things before they go into production. But now another trend started, which is the open source. open source security, which created a new challenge because most of the code from open source is coming from packages someone else written for us. So we need to make sure that before we take it and enjoy the puzzle or the block building of my application, I need to make sure the blocks are clean and sanitized before I can use them. So now I need to take care for scanning my code, the SAS scanner, but also scanning the packages that I'm getting from the outside. This brings a list of vulnerabilities that sometimes I don't even have the control of how to fix them because it's not my code. I just need to make sure I got the latest or the fixed version of this vulnerability and take the latest fixed package. And that's not an easy task because today when you bring in an open source into your software, it's not just the open source itself. It brings a lot of transitive dependencies. It's like when you bring you bring the open source, it brings its entire family, its children, grandchildren, grandchildren, and a lot of transitive packages that are coming behind the scenes into what you believe is your software. So this is how the plot thickens, but it goes even deeper when concept like infrastructure as a code, when all the infrastructure elements are described by code with Terraform files, CloudFormation, you name it, it actually becomes a way to secure your infrastructure by looking on this file and scanning them. Not mentioning the containers and that started with the Docker revolution back in 2014, 15. Everything went containers. Later on, everything went into pods in Kubernetes. And then it's the first time that engineering team needs to take care of the underlying layers of the application, the actual infrastructure that it relies on. And they need to be scanned as well and make sure they're not having long lists of vulnerabilities. And of course they will. And of course they'll need to be patched to the latest, etc. So at the end of the day, we ended up that now in a modern application, we know the list of vulnerability. That's great. So now we know we have thousands of vulnerabilities in our software that we need to fix. Of course, we need to fix them all. If you ask the security team, they'll tell you, yeah, of course, we need to be super clean, have nothing in our software, not from containers and SAST and SCA and whatever. But the sad truth is that we're not managing them well. We're not fixing them all. And the list keeps growing. Every single engineering team that I led in my career, I was never able to find the capacity to clean every single vulnerability to the latest priority and make sure the software is clean. And this is even without mentioning AI revolution and the code generated by AI done today and is about to explode in the next decade and make this problem even more evident and the code and the vulnerabilities that developers team needs to take care of even longer. So now what? So here's a trick. How about we take this huge list of vulnerabilities and we shift left, which means we put it earlier in the development phases rather than later after the software is being developed or go to production, and make sure these are being fixed before they're going into production. So we move earlier the gates. That's nice. That's a good idea that developers would just fix stuff, everything they do before it goes into production. And this is a trend that started, I guess, around, again, 2015 or 16, starting to pitch for shifting left the security to the development team and no longer have the security team controlling and having a waterfall type of gates on every security milestone. And this slows down development because we want to move to an agile paradigm. We want to create value for the company much faster. This is brilliant, isn't it? Just let them have that fix and we'll not have a security issue. So let's spend some time about shifting left. So just to align on the terminology, shifting left, of course, it's a very healthy pattern, which means Everything you do earlier in the game, there's a much easier to be fixed, much easier to be caught, and what much cheaper to be fixed, other than the problems that it causes you while in production. Just imagine a SQL injection or remote code execution, whatever OWASP top 10 type of vulnerability is in there, being leveraged by an attacker, ransomware. The company can pay, millions of dollars just to get out of this vulnerability, and the impact of this, or data loss, whatever. It affects the brand of the company, its credibility, the data of its users, etc. Rather than fixing it by a simple bug for this or the other developers that takes I don't know, 5, 4, 3 days, calendar days to fix. So the concept is great. However, what actually happened in reality, and we see that a lot, that the first thing that happened when we shift left is that we shift left the responsibility. And this is not what we wanted. We didn't want the application and security teams to shift the responsibility on security to the left side so they can go, have more time on the beach or drinking margaritas. That was not I'm not saying they're doing that. Probably one of the busiest teams in the organization, and we'll talk about it later. But still, we didn't want to shift the responsibility left. We wanted to shift the gates where the problems are being surfaced. So how do we mitigate that between shifting left and getting better security without shifting the responsibility? And maybe another question, why actually when we shift left to the developer hands, that's not solve the problem? What's in that developer's DNA? And I don't want to patronize being myself half of my career a developer, but I want to offer some suggestions on why this is so hard for developers to take ownership on security, full ownership. Well, it starts with that when you go to computer science college or university, you get 90% of your training around how to write code and computer science logic and theory and practices, etc. But how many of us actually went to security training? Maybe you'll take one training, one course, maybe two in one semester. If you like it, that's going to be nice. You may take another one, but this is not a fundamental part of your training. The second thing, to be honest, you're not being paid for having a secured code. You're being paid to generate features on deadlines. This is how developers work. They get feature lists, they have sprints with a lot of course, they have KPIs for quality and not having bugs, and security is definitely part of that. But this is when, in their very essence and core, this is not what they meant to do or love to do. Most developers are not passionate about security, period. And we tried to educate them. That was not a successful exercise for the last couple of decades, educating developers. Of course, it helps. And of course, there's a barrier, a minimum education that every developer and team needs to go through. But at the end of the day, the chain is as strong as its weakest link. And even if you have a super trained engineering team, you will always have the new guys who just joined and didn't know this practice or the other practice. So you cannot really count solely on education. Security is a profession, especially AppSec. You need to know exactly how the risk is built, where you will be attacked. You need to have an attacker mindset and not a feature mindset. That's a very different paradigm. So with that, and this is what we're saying in Backslash, we call it the return of the AppSec hero. So I think that the AppSec teams are still there. Some of them have been growing and got more and more vulnerabilities to handle and more teams. They're super busy chasing their own tails, cleaning up security issues and making sure they're not hurt with this or the other CVE. But at the end of the day, this role is super important for the organization. It's a key because these guys and their profession, they can manifest it into the right organizational policies. fine-grained policies that can help the organization, on one hand, to smartly address the right risk, on the other hand, to enforce them with the developers' help in the earlier gates of the CI. So as we see the application security hero role, number one is to prioritize the risk. And this is a hard task. It's not even humanly possible. And I'll prove that to you. And communicate evidence to the development team, not just list of vulnerabilities. When you're saying there's a CVE, show me how am I going to be attacked by it. Why do I care develop as a developer about this particular CVE? Show me that is actually being used in my code. Show me that there's an API that can exploit it. It's the evidence makes all the difference. So let's talk about the number one criteria for effective modern AppSec. And as you probably guessed by now, when you get hundreds of thousands or tens of thousands of vulnerabilities, prioritization becomes a key. But why is it so hard for us humans to handle prioritization? I'll start with a question. How many options are there to prioritize a simple list of 10 CVEs? I guess most of you can have a ballpark number, but again, whenever I see these numbers, it's crazy, right? Factorial, 10 factorial, 10 just to order 10 list items. Just imagine how this number grows when you just ask a simple question or a simple task for someone. Hey, can you prioritize this 100 list and we will triage them later this afternoon? This is unhumanly, humans are not capable for this task so easily and even at all. So prioritization is the key, and that's very hard to do. It's easy to go over them and say, this is high, this is medium. Maybe not as easy, but it's easier than have a full rank of the real comparison of what's really important for the organization to start with. But that's very hard. And this is the holy grail of the new effective modern application security platforms. So as we see today, the number one criteria for choosing a modern AppSec platform today is the ability to prioritize for you. Instead of having the developers chase the false positive, whether something is important or not, it's accessible or not, reachable, even being used in my code, is it business critical? Is it being used in production? There's so many criteria, but it's a very close, strict, straightforward algorithm that the developers will do themselves anyhow. I think this is a fundamental request from an AppSec platform in 2024. If I can ask ChatGPT to give me a picture of a caveman writing Python code, I think having a prioritization for my AppSec program would be a fair enough request in 2024. Okay, we don't want to have this problem over and over again. I can tell you true stories. I mean, I had times when I had list of 1,000 vulnerabilities, and I was running in sprints, 2-week sprints. And I would go to the application security team and say, listen, guys, what do you want me to fix from this 1,000 list? There's no way I'm going to fix all of them. So they would say, you know what, go just for the very high ones. I had a list of 50. I said, I can do 5. They say, okay, start with this 5 high ones. I would take my best security-oriented developers to look into this 5 in the next sprint. And guess what? 4 out of 5 came back to me by the end of the sprint telling me that was a false positive, and only 1 was fixed. And guess what? By the end of the sprint, we handled or resolved 5 of them, 1 by fixing, 4 by pushing back, and we find out 20 more. So that was the state of application security in my entire career, just scanning for stuff, because you need to scan for regulatory reason. You need to scan your environments, but at the end of the day, it was not as efficient as how development organization moved to an agile, fast developing environments. So my point, and I think this is my key point for the entire lecture, is that when you're replacing a car today, It really depends where you live, whether you live in the States, in Europe, China. But one of the most, definitely the most fundamental question you would ask yourself in 2024 when you're buying a car: which platform will you buy? Is it going to be electric, or the engine will be an old fuel-based engine? That's the number one question. You're not going to ask yourself how fast will it go, um, maybe how nice will be the color or the wheels. You're going to ask yourself the platform. Is it going to be electric or not? And of course, you expect to have a decent driving experience, nice colors, nice car. You feel nice, it will be nicely fit with your identity. It will be big for your need, as big as you need for your need. But that's all become secondary questions. So my point today is when you go and replace your application security platform, you want to ask yourself, what engines do I need behind the scenes? Is it going to be prioritization engine that can tell me the right things that I need to fix? And on top of that, of course, we're going to have the right flows and opening tickets for developers and having nice connectivity to Slack and whatever, and have nice reporting. But at the end of the day, if I'll get the same old thousands vulnerabilities list from my SAST, SCA scanning, actually remained in the same paradigm that I was running 10 years ago or 15 years ago. The numbers should drop dramatically. And we have the engines and the technology today by the most modern vendors to allow that, to have the top 7 issues you need to fix tomorrow morning rather than 1,000 issues that you need to clean up for hygiene reasons, that you will never reach out to the full list of 1,000. So it's demo time. I'll show you a little bit about how Backslash looks like. Give me a second, I'll share my screen. We just log into Backslash. I will not be tempted to give you a full drive on the platform because it's super cool. But as you can see here, the first time I connect into my environment, I see the top issues in all the category, the OSS issues, licensing issues, malicious packages, but mainly around the SAST and SCA. But I want to show you how prioritization engine looks like and policy engine looks like. So let's say in my environment,
Hey, Shahar, we don't see it yet.
Oh, sorry for that. How about now?
Yep, all good.
Perfect. Thanks for letting me know, Scott. So
Thanks.
this is the first experience when you see Backslash. You see different categories of the top issues that you need to address as a security team. This is a platform that is designed for the application security teams to engage with developers and not for developers to make sense out of the thousand of vulnerabilities. It's application security first. Of course, the interaction of the tool goes between the two teams, but the mindset is around policies, fine-grained policies created by the application security team and then manifested as part of the development processes. So with that, I'll show you how it looks like. So let's say in my environment, which is not that big, by the way, a few applications that I've connected, you can see when I look at the OSS packages that are vulnerable, the numbers immediately goes to the thousands. Okay, I have 6,207 matching results. Now, I will start building a policy, a fine-grained policy that will say, hey, I would like to look only for the ones that are actually used in my code. They're reachable from my code into the actual package, which is vulnerable. And you'll be surprised what's the ratio of these vulnerabilities. They're a very tiny fraction of the entire vulnerabilities I have in my environment. So I may have many more packages which are vulnerable, but I can prove there's no flow in the code that reach to them. Exactly what would my developer would do if I asked them to look into that. So if I look only for the reachable one from the thousands, I already go to 99 matching results. Still pretty big amount, but in a very different scale. So now I can add more criteria. For example, let me start in this particular policy just with the ones that there's a high probability there's an exploit right now out there that can exploit these vulnerabilities. There are a lot of CVEs that there's no proven exploit that they can be used and can be leveraged to attack me. So when I just look at these two criteria, show me all the reachable packages and let me know where can I be attacked. Immediately, the discussion goes into this very few issues. And I can save this as a policy and make sure this very strict policy is being enforced in my company. And I want to make sure this very tiny policy is always remain cleaned and have zero issues in it. And of course, you have the issue screens when you see all the policies and how, when they're enforced around the SaaS and packages, etc., how much they came up with. And you see they're all very manageable numbers. So this is about how we build policies and how we minimize the number of attention and alerts to the very few that violates the policy based on reachability, for example, as a prioritization criteria. Now, once I go and talk to these developers about the 6 issues in this policy that I built, I'm not going to tell them, hey, Scott or Steve, you need to go ahead and fix this because this is a high CVSS score. I can actually have an evidence for him and tell him, hey, Mr. Scott, in your code, in your service called Java Sec code, there's a very clear path, reachable path from the service into the vulnerable package. This is why we ask you to fix that, and this is why you should care. And we do that for SEA, we do that for SAST as well. We show the exploitable path. So once he sees that, there's no more question marks. Of course, I'm putting the organization, I put the organization in risk because I hit this vulnerable code from my piece of code that I'm responsible for. And guess what? You get a nice benefit. While you fix these packages and patch it to the recommended version, you get rid of this, I don't know, long list of 34 more vulnerabilities that will be patched immediately. So evidence, policies, and prioritization by, for example, reachability aspects. And this is a very clear, neat way to address modern prioritization problem. And the holy grail for every application security platform is no longer finding all the problems. This has been commoditized by open sources, by other vendors. The holy grail of AppSec is understanding how you utilize your capacity, your fixing capacity, to the highest risk and to be able to prove that to the organization. I think I'll pause here. We're 33 minutes into the lecture. Scott, I think this will be a good time to open up for question. Maybe before we do that, I just go back here and put this nice slides in front of you just in case you want to engage more. Of course, you can go to our website. This QR code will take us to a new project where you can experiment with our sandbox with your own environment and see how that works in your own context. That's really cool. Of course, if you want to ask me about some chess moves or Tai Chi history or Ashtanga skills, you can also, whenever you want, just feel free to reach out using my email.
Very nice.
Scott?
Yeah,
Thank you.
And those dolly images came out great. Those were really nice.
Okay.
So we do have a few questions in here. The first one, they're saying / is mainly about prioritization. But why is the standard CVSS scoring not enough?
Oh yeah, that's a very good question. So maybe just to align us all, CVSS score is the standard way to rank the severity of a certain vulnerability, right? So every vulnerability you'll have in NVD or a national vulnerability database, you'll have its score. Sometimes the score that the vendor will give to this vulnerability will be a bit different. Um, and I think this was helpful to understand that log4j is 9.8 or 10, and others will be a little bit lower or different. But um, I think all in all, it misses the context of your own specific application. So, and actually, from our experience with our customers, there's a very low connection between the CVSS score to the actual risk. And I explain a little bit about it because I know it's a bold statement. So let's think about it this way. You have a high CVSS score of a CVE that I can prove you 100% there's no way it can be reached from your code. There's no physical path to reach into this CVE, although it's part of your code base. So we will definitely want to go ahead and clean it up from hygiene reasons, but that's not the one that's going to hurt you. On the other hand, we ran into POVs and working with our customers where we found medium kind of negligible. Once you will get them, if you have a 1,000 list, you'll get them. I don't know, when you hit the 801, probably you'll have time for this medium 5.7. But this particular one, we can see it's reachable. It's on an exploitable path on your code to an external API, and we can prove the developer that this is exactly the junction of your code in production that can really put your application in risk, and data can leak out of your running application through this medium fix. And this is why the context of how this vulnerability manifests in your particular application, this is what makes the difference. While CVSS score and any other scoring system can help us, once you find two reachable paths, of course you want to start with the high CVSS score and only then go to the medium one. But that should not be the only and first way to prioritize the risk. I hope that answer the question. If you have any follow-up, whoever asked that, so of course you can write it down in the chat or just shoot me an email.
Okay. All right. Yeah, and another question here is just an observation. It feels like Backslash, although a code scanning platform, is not really focused on developers, but rather more on the security teams. So they're wondering, why is that?
Yeah, I think there are many. Well, it's twofold. One, I think there are many other vendors who try to do the developer play and help the developers to become more secure, to make sure they're taking care and responsible for the security. And I think when you go all the way for all the reasons I listed in the presentation, why developers at the end of the day don't really care about security. I know it's hard to hear that. We all want to say, yes, of course, they care about that. It's their code, it's an ownership model. But we see that every day with our customers that it should not be the only gate to protect the organization. There's a profession called application security that needs to understand the risk, the attacker's mindset, close all the holes, and prioritize where the developers should take action, because left alone, developers will always go for speed and developing features and making the company and the software grow faster. That will be their number one passion and result.
Okay. All right. Excellent. Well, Shahar, I think that's probably a great place to leave it. And just to recap, there's the QR code there. There's the link quickly on the demo. This is the last chance to grab that. And also, you can email Shahar if you want to get some more details on Ashtanga yoga, or whether he likes a white or black, or what his favorite chess openings are on the chessboard. But and of course, questions about backslash as well. Shahar, thank you so much for being here. This has been a really fascinating presentation. Really appreciate it.
Absolutely, Scott. Pleasure. Thanks for having me, and thanks for everyone who joined the session.
All right. And the last thing that we're going to do here is the prize drawing. And instead of bringing up the prize drawing slide, I just will leave this this QR code up here in the demo in the email, just in case you want to grab that here in the closing seconds of the event. But the winner of the $250 Amazon gift card today is Dave Marcinowski from Connecticut. So congratulations to Dave. We'll be in touch to get you your card. And with that, on the behalf of the Actual Tech Media team, I want to thank Backslash for making this event possible. Thanks, Shahar, again for a great presentation. And thanks, as always, for attending and for your questions. That's going to include, tongue-tied today. That's going to conclude today's event. Have a fantastic rest of your day.